Hold on one second, okay?
Whoops. Can I stop it?
That's all right.
Not right now. Nope. I think we're live streamed.
Okay. We are live, all right.
Like it.
Okay, so we're good to go, Margie?
Yes.
Great. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's meeting of the Environment Subcommittee. Hopefully everyone's gotten the agenda and seen the reprints that were sent out today. Just so everyone knows, we'll be going in reverse numeric order. So we'll be starting with HB 848, then 843, 624, and then 31. And just so everyone knows up front, I mean, we'll be for 624, we're just going to be doing an update as to where things stand from our from last week's meeting with new proposed amendments, and then we'll be reviewing House Bill 31, going through the different provisions of 31. So, okay, well, with that, let's start with House Bill 848. And Kristen, could you review what this bill does for us and the sponsor amendments?
Sure. So the bill is establishing a pilot program to authorize the regulated use of reclaimed water as a source for drinking water treatment facilities. There are a few amendments where one, they're renaming the pilot program and makes technical and clarifying changes in the bill. The amendment increases the length of time for which reclaimed water must be held in an environmental buffer before intake to a drinking water treatment facility, but authorizes a permit applicant to request a reduction to this time frame under certain conditions. And there is also an amendment to authorize the department to renew a potable reuse permit if the pilot program ended up being terminated. There is a termination provision in the bill. And so what this amendment would do to allow the permit issued under this bill would be able to be renewed.
Okay. Delgado. Charles, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does
Sure.
this does this comply the bill to the Senate version that passed on the 27th of February?
It does.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
I move favorable.
Okay.
To the amendments.
All right. Let's go through any other questions that folks have, and then we'll take up your favorable motion on the amendments. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the reprint, and I just was wondering if you could talk about page 4, the changes on lines 14 to 17, regarding the PFAS chemicals, what those changes do.
Yeah,
I think it's meant to be clarifying, but so that they don't exceed the primary drinking water regulations as established by EPA. But I don't have a specific explanation for that.
I don't know what those what is sections 9-406C or V. I guess that's part of this bill.
So their drinking water, I think, standards. I can look at it while the subcommittee discusses.
Thanks. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, it's a fair question. And so just looking at the language, controls for maximum concentrations of PFAS chemicals established by the department.
And the department's on the call too. They would be the experts on the technical side of this.
So Gabby, would you be able to shed any insight into the, what this, looks like, technical, but nonetheless substantive amendment does?
I'm actually going to pass the baton over to Les Knapp because he has been working extensively with the sponsors on this one. So
okay, all right, Les. Les, can you help us out?
So yes, this amendment was specifically requested by MDE Frankly, because we don't fully know what EPA is going to do yet with the PFAS requirements. So this language is a little more generic, saying whatever they do, whether it's just in regulations or they establish a maximum contaminant level, however they proceed, this will have to meet at a minimum with what they said.
Okay, I certainly see the reference, but not to exceed any primary drinking water regs is issued by EPA. Can you help with the notwithstanding phrase? Notwithstanding section 9406C or 947B of this title.
So that is just to clarify that there are several different types of PFAS limitations. And some of those are already, they're coming through drinking water versus what could be in wastewater and biosolids. So we wanted just to be clear that we're referencing here the drinking water limits of what EPA is going to set as opposed to the wastewater. So that's why the notwithstanding language is in there.
Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Russo, you're good? Okay. Good question. Delegate Terrazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I actually am not sure how this works, whether you want comments or just questions right now.
Both are fine.
But I'm very uncomfortable with this bill. Like I mean, I may just be the only one and then I just vote against it myself, but I guess I'm just uncomfortable. I don't feel clear on the science yet. And I wouldn't want this to be the drinking water given to me or my kids. So it's just my 2 cents.
Okay. All right. Are there any, since we do have some, we do have MDE here, any particular questions you want to send their way that could help address your concerns or?
I mean, I guess I'd like to see the science behind why, like how this is safe. Like how do we know this is safe?
Okay, well, Les, can I call you back to the virtual microphone and ask you to, from MDE's point of view, why you're okay with this bill?
Sure, and we can get you some specific information on studies, but the actual technology that is being proposed to be used in Westminster has been used in a number of public drinking facilities for years now in California and a number of Western states. So it has been reviewed, and this technology for this is not new, just its use in Maryland is. But we can get you the specific issues on how the reverse osmosis filtration and then the UV exposure system works.
How many years did you say it's been used?
It's been around for a number of years. I will have to get you the specific. It's not new. It's not super old, but I want to roughly say about a decade of active public use, but I will check with California. And of course, they have a lot of strict monitoring requirements for public health. But I will get you that exactly.
And do we have all those same regulations? Would all those same things be in our bill, or?
This bill is
have
based
additional?
on the California regulations. Yes, all of the requirements in here come from California and
Right.
how they are doing their program.
Right, but the other way around, you said all of these come from California, but do all the California ones exist here in this bill?
Do all of these, I'm not sure I understand the question, Delegate.
So you're saying that everything we have here comes from the California bill, law, but is everything in the California law in this bill?
All the major requirements for the actual treatment, yes. Not every single thing, since they manage their water very differently. There are obviously some differences in how we're approaching this, but the actual treatment requirements, the log requirements for the level of pathogens, the processes you have to go through, the double checks, the mixing rates for the reservoir, yes, those are all the same as California.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Terraza. Other questions? Delegate Ruth, is that a new question?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really a question, just wanted to mention, I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, but I'm trying to keep an open mind. But I did also notice that the Senate version has passed, and it looks like it passed unanimously. Third reader.
Okay. All right, thanks for pointing that out. Delegate Foley.
Unlike my colleagues, this is a comment, not a question, but unlike my colleagues, I'm not uncomfortable with this. Our drinking water, we have a lot of problems with drinking water supply, cleanliness. I mean, look what happened in Baltimore County. I think this is a technology that we should encourage. And we do need to solve this problem. We can't just like other environmental problems, we can't just say, well, it has, we're afraid to try something new. So I think this is a good bill, and I intend to support it.
Okay, thank you. Les, I've got a question for you just on this issue of safety. You notice on page 3 of the reprint down at the bottom, it says the reclaimed water, for MDE to approve this permit. It says the reclaimed water is stored in an environmental buffer for a residence time of at least 180 days before intake into a drinking water treatment facility. And I guess, is that provide some additional, for MDE to do any follow-up tests, or just to be 110% sure that this is safe to drink?
So the drinking water, as it will come out through this process, when it enters the reservoir, will be at a drinkable level. And had you seen the video that I think Westminster was going to offer, they would show that people are drinking the water prior to it, prior to where it would be returned into the reservoir. The mixing time is an additional precaution to deal with. Basically, just mix it back with the spring-fed and rain-fed waters that come in, and that just gives us one extra additional safeguard before it returns to the drinking water plant for treatment to be brought back up again a second time to drinkable levels before going out to the residents.
Okay.
That does sound like a lot of treatment.
No, that's true. Okay, any other questions or comments? Delegate Otto.
Mr. Chairman, I move the amendments.
Okay, is there, Delegate
Second.
Lund, did you have a question or?
I'm seconding.
Second, okay. So we have a second motion in favor of the amendments and a second. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have the bill as amended.
Move the bill is amended. Sorry,
Okay,
Sarah.
okay. All those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Okay. All right, bill passes as amended. Thank you. Next, we will move on to House Bill 843, the Baltimore Regional Water Governance Task Force. And Kristen, if you could remind us as to what this bill does.
Well, as you mentioned, it's establishing the Baltimore Regional Water Governance Task Force to study approaches to water and wastewater governance in the Baltimore region.
Okay, and remind us when the report from the task force is due.
On or before January 30th, 2024.
Okay. Questions, Delegate Ruth?
Not really a question, just wanted to say this is really important to, my county, Baltimore County, and also Baltimore City, and they both obviously came out to the hearing with strong support.
That is definitely true. Okay, Delegate Otto.
Yes, it says favorable with amendments. What's the what do the
Under
amendments
the
do?
testimony, Kristen.
That's just to note that there was testimony that was favorable with amendments. We didn't receive any member amendments. That's just in case you wanted to take a look at testimony when you receive the agenda, if you wanted to peek through it and see There were a couple,
Okay,
You okay? You good,
Yeah.
Delegate? Okay. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you. I'm reading this. This is just pertains to Baltimore and Baltimore City, correct?
correct.
Thank you.
Well,
You mean, well, there
Right,
is,
there is-
the region would go, the region, Baltimore City also serves other regions besides Baltimore County with water and on a smaller scale. There's Anne Arundel, Carroll, Howard, Hartford.
But it's just the Baltimore water system we're dealing with.
Right.
Thanks.
right, but membership is some reason I can't find the bill, but I know there's membership. Baltimore County gets to appoint some members, Baltimore City, and there's one representative from the other counties that are served by the water and wastewater system. Is that right?
Right. 5 from Baltimore City, 3 from Baltimore County, and then 1 would be representative of one of the counties in the larger region that you just referred to.
Okay,
and it is a task force bill, correct?
Correct.
that is correct.
I move the bill.
Second.
Okay, any further questions about this bill? Okay, all those in favor of the bill, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill passes, no amendments, thank you. Okay, next bill. House Bill 624. We have, when we talked about the bill last week, we had a number of questions. We have gotten some sponsor amendments, so figured we'll put this on the agenda just for sort of updates as to new information, new amendments since last week. So Kristen, could you help us with that?
So do you want me to start with the bill, what we talked about last week, and then the amendments that came in, or do you want me to bring
Sure.
up MDE's responses to the subcommittee questions?
Why don't you first bring up the bill, then we can take MD's responses to our questions and any proposed amendments.
Okay, and so just to recap from last week, the bill that was discussed last week related to provisions regarding notice requirements that apply to a water supplier when a water system is not in compliance with state drinking water regulations. The bill authorized additional means of communication for notices and requires that at least 3 authorized means of communications are used. There was an amendment which would require, the bill requires a water supplier to give notice to MDE if there's a positive test for E. coli. And then there was an amendment that required the water supplier would then be required to immediately begin preparations for issuing a boil water advisory. And then the Department of the Environment brought up that the issue with providing the 3 types of notice is difficult for the smaller water suppliers. So they had suggested language that perhaps that the requirement to provide at least 3 of those authorized means of communication would only apply to the larger water suppliers. I can bring up the amendment that the sponsor submitted. I don't think it effectuates exactly what MDE was trying to do, but I can explain it. Once it's up, it might be easier just to go through it that way.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Oh, so hold on one second. I have to open it from another place. My labels aren't showing. So. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the sponsor of the bill submitted an amendment that first would define supplier of water as meaning a community water system that serves at least 3,500 customers. The way that this amendment's drafted, it's drafted to the whole section. So that it would change the notification requirements. All the notification requirements that are under this bill would then only apply to the larger community water systems. And I think the intent of MDE was really just to address the one piece of the bill that was requiring, at least three types of notice, that part of the bill would just apply to the larger water supply systems. And they also mentioned that the serving 3,500 customers, they would prefer that number to be at 3,300 because it's consistent with other types of provisions that apply. So a community water system a water supplier would know, they're either in or out, because there's other types, I think, of requirements that where a smaller supplier is not subject to, a requirement. So that was one piece. And then another piece of the sponsor's amendment came in to extend notice requirement, expand notice requirement that currently applies to MTBE notices to also be provided to colleges and students.
Oh, that's what you have up on the screen right now.
So starting in line 23, there's notification requirements that apply to when there's MTBE, the methyl tertiary butyl ether, when it's in drinking water that exceeds the state advisory level. That notice currently needs to be provided to schools and child care centers, and this expands it to also to notice be provided to colleges and students.
But
Right, and Kristen, I think I asked you what types of when is there MTB contamination, and you could give the same answer you gave to me earlier.
We dealt with this as a committee many years ago, and it's associated, I think, with underground storage tanks and at gas stations.
Okay.
MDE, certainly correct me. I don't want to be stating anything that's not correct.
Okay. All right. We do have a few questions. Delegate Ruth.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually raising my hand about the notice provisions, but in looking at this, and I get to that in a minute, but in looking at this, this is not just saying notifying institutions of higher education. This is notifying parents or legal guardians of students. So potentially we're saying they have to notify parents of adults because students at institutions of higher education are technically often adults. And is that really the intent?
I think the intent is to notify the students, but I directly. But I see how there's confusion in drafting because it leads in the parents of all minors and students. But I'm wondering, because the language is adding institutions of higher education, that the intent was also that the students themselves, because recognizing that this covers minors, but that there would be adult students that also should be notified. But I agree that it's not clear. I'm not going to make a judgment to the intent, but it certainly would make sense that those students would get the notice directly and not their parents.
Yeah, that just seems that it should be going to the students, not the parents. And I don't know if that can be just rejiggered to try to make that a little clearer. But I actually wanted to address the notification requirements, and maybe it doesn't matter if we're eliminating the smaller providers anyway. But one thing that I notice is that part of the problem is that most of those required types of notification do have a pretty high bar of, cost or, difficulty. And I don't know if adding some other types of notice might be helpful there. And, I just know, like radio, television, those things are all, expensive and or difficult, that I can see why a smaller thing. But if there are other ways that can be added to that. I know the situation that happened in the Baltimore region, one of the issues, and I think that the reason for this is that there was a post on Twitter about it, and then the DPW people, I guess, went home, or the social media people went home. So there was like a post on Twitter and that was it. And then there was no other information. So I guess if we're eliminating the smaller providers, I guess it doesn't really matter. Sorry.
I think the intent here was to eliminate, not from providing notice, that they would still have to provide one type of notice, and then the larger ones would have to provide at least 3.
Right. But I guess the question is, should that one type of notice be social media where not everybody might see it? I guess.
Well, it doesn't, they could choose from that list.
Okay.
And the amendment's not that, so the amendment, how it's drafted right now, exempts smaller suppliers from all types of notices. But if the subcommittee was interested in kind of working with what MDE was pointing out, is that the 3 types of notices, like this provision would still exist, but a smaller supplier would just have to provide one, and then they could choose which worked best.
That would seem better to me.
Yeah, and there's a catch-all there, any other means authorized by the department as well, so.
Great, thank you.
But that's just not what we have. That's not the amendment that was provided.
Right, okay. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was questioning where this kicks in. Right now, with what we had before us, it's 3,500. And Kristen, you mentioned something about 3,300 that was more consistent with some of the other regulations.
From my understanding, yes. So right now, the bill as drafted applies to all water suppliers, regardless of how many customers it serves. The amendment here is intending to narrow, the idea is that water suppliers that's, serve a smaller number of customers would only have to give one type of notice. Right now, in the amendment, the number is at 3,500, and MDE had explained that 3,300 was the more consistent number. If the subcommittee was going to work on that part of the bill, that they would prefer 3,300 customers.
But I wouldn't have any problem with that if that's consistent with some of the other problems or regulations.
Yeah, so someone from MDE who wants to address that point.
Yeah.
300
Yeah.
threshold.
Yeah, so the 3,300 would just be, that number would be consistent with EPA requirements. So we just wanted to keep it consistent, so that way there's not any confusion for the water suppliers, because currently that's how they identify themselves in different tiers. So they would identify as 3,300. So I think if it was the 3,500 number, it would be a little bit confusing to figure out where they stood.
All right.
Well, I'd move to amend it to 3,300.
Okay. Well, Delegate, at this point, we're just reviewing the amendments.
Okay.
After the discussion, when we're done with all the discussion questions, I'll just suggest that anyone who would like to work on fine-tuning the amendments that we have before us, feel free to do that, working with MDE and the sponsor, and we could, conceivably take this up next week. But let's just go through the questions that we have right now. Okay, Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a dumbass question. Page 1, line 11 is methyl butyl E. coli.
No, that's a different contaminant. And that's in an existing law. And so that notice requirement is the existing notice requirement as MTBE for short, easier to say. That existing notification requirement was being amended by this amendment.
So it's something, could you tell me what MTB is? Since it's not E. coli, just curious.
No, it relates to oil. I can't remember how to describe it. I'm just going to look up a definition.
It was the oxygenate that they used in the gasoline instead of using corn.
I have a a sheet from MDE that was posted in 2015, kind of giving some background on MTBE that I just posted.
Okay, thanks, Gabby. Yeah, no, I had the same question. What exactly, what's the, the real life situation that this type of contamination
Yeah,
relates
so
to?
it was an additive, a
Yeah.
fuel additive.
Fuel additive, yeah. Okay, so gasoline refiners phased it out of our gasoline supplies and replaced with ethanol. But that's right. Okay. But I take it still might show up as contamination. Is that right? Even though it's been phased out? I guess we don't have to speculate on that, but okay, Delegate Morgan, you good? Okay, Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a couple of questions. First, I missed what was said about gas stations. Does this have anything to do with gas stations, or is it just that the 3,300 was used for gas stations? What was the issue with gas stations?
That's just the MTBE issue, is where the leakage was coming from. It was a fuel additive. It's very water soluble, and it was getting into drinking water. And there's notification requirements when a water supplier detects a certain level, I guess, of MTBE.
Yeah,
So
so I
wait.
guess this is, we'll go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Delegate. Well, I was
This
gonna
is-
say, I guess this has happened. Sorry to cut you off, but I guess this has happened when there have been leaks from underground tanks at gas stations.
Okay, but for the bill's sake, it exists in the current law that we're not doing anything, changing the notice for that.
The amendment changes the notice to expand notice to colleges and probably intending to students, but the way the language is reading, it might require that to be provided to parents of students. But I think the intent is
Okay.
to expand notification requirements to colleges and students.
Okay, so then thank you. So then on this 3,500 or 3,300, I'm fine with the 3,300. I think it makes sense for it to be consistent. But what I don't want to see is there to be no notice if you're below that. So I agree with whoever said that, that we still need to we have to do that kind of notice. And I'm okay with if it's only in 2 ways or whatever we think it needs to be. But I think there has to be notice. But another question I have, because I don't see it on here, and maybe it is here somewhere, you could just tell me I missed it. But I don't see anything that says it has to be on any website or anywhere in particular. And I feel like there should also be that notice available somewhere that somebody can check out. And not because that would be the notice, but that would be the confirmation. So let's say I heard from my friends that they got a text message or they saw something, they got a robocall or whatever, I'm not home. I want to find out, is this real? How do I confirm this? It seems to me that there should be something here where, either the supplier has to have it on their website, the counties that include that water supply. I'd prefer it to be the counties with the water supply, but whatever it is, MDE somewhere that somebody, once they got that notice, could check and confirm. So that's my 2 cents on amendment.
Or you saw it on Nextdoor.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. You see in all sorts of social media, and then you're like, wait a minute, I want to confirm this. I want to make sure. And I frankly don't know where anybody would go except for to us, because which I'm fine with, but I just think there should be some other place for them to check out and confirm.
Gabby, currently, when there is a water contamination under this bill, would MDE provide any information? I mean, I realize, you're probably dependent on getting information from the water supplier, but does MDE provide any notice on your webpage when something like this happens?
I believe so. I believe there's something to the extent with our emergency management team, but let me just get that double check with you, just exactly where that would be found. And and how we could distribute that information to constituents.
And then, Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow up one last time.
Sure.
Is there a notice when this warning has been lifted? Because I guess what I see happening is chaos, a little bit of chaos. Oh, that's, that was a long time ago, or, oh, that's still true, or that's not still true. I want that to be, whatever information we're getting out to be clear.
Oh, another good question. I guess under current law, there's no requirement that notice be provided when the advisory has been lifted. I mean, I assume that would be provided, but there's nothing. And again, Gabby, if you could confirm, there's no requirement. There's no legal requirement that notice be provided when the warning has been lifted.
Right. I think over the summer we send out a notice, I think through our website. But again, I just want to confirm, because I know we did send it out and it was distributed throughout the community when the boil water advisory was lifted. But let me just confirm like how that was distributed and like where on the website. That way.
Right.
Okay.
And then just finally, in relation to that, I wouldn't want the cost to be that they have to send it out in every different, three different places. Like maybe if the notice says, here's where you check to find out if it's been lifted, that to me, it just needs to be clear. Although I guess there's the issue of people who don't have access to the web. So I don't know, now I'm talking in circles, but I just think that lifting piece is important. Thanks. That's it.
Sorry, I did want to note too, one part of the bill is the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. And I know they play a big key in dispersing this information and with like lifting as well. So I can follow up with MDM as well and just see what they do.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess Gabby, there are two questions that Delegate Terrazzo raised about, does MDE post information about the advisory when it's issued by a water supplier, and what information is required or happens with respect to lifting the advisory? Okay. Delegate Foley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so just to weigh in, I think we should do the 3,300. And I don't think that we should exempt any water supplier, community water supplier, from this, from this bill, just the notification requirements being the multiple outlets. So that's where I stand on that. But my question is, under the section about notifying the parents and students and guardians, and it doesn't prescribe how to do that. I don't know if we want to get into the weeds on that, but it's pretty prescriptive in terms of the notice to the public. And I just didn't know if we wanted to say, do they, if there was anything we wanted to say in there about how they notify parents and students, whether they do it through the school or, I don't know. I just, it's not a hill I'll die on, but it just seems like there could be some fleshing out there.
One thing about that, that's not, that was new. The bill came in, with regarding notifications and E. coli. And I mean, it's not that it's unrelated, it's still a notification. It's just, it wasn't anything that got teased out, in the hearing. So. Right. I guess it drew attention to it because it added the higher, institutions of higher learning. But anyway, that's not a hill I'll die on, but it just sometimes, like for active shooters, for example, there is a very specific warning system that people put in place to warn campuses and schools of active shooters. This isn't quite that level, but anyway, that again, it's just I just note that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move the bill with an amendment that reduces it from 3,500 to 3,300, and I move the amendment.
Second.
Thanks, yeah, thank you. I mean, I I would ask that since there are a number of issues that we do need to address, that we not move amendments tonight, because we do I think even for the 3,300, it sounds like what we want to do is not exempt the smaller suppliers from any notice requirements, as I think that the sponsors amendment inadvertently does, but we want to say at least there's some notice requirement for the small ones, have only the 3 notice requirements apply to the ones above 3,300. And plus there are these other questions. So Delegate Otto, if you don't mind.
For the chairman, I withdraw my motion.
All right, thank you.
I withdraw my second. I'm just enthusiastic tonight.
Okay, all right. No, appreciate all the interest in this bill. Any other questions? Okay. And Gabby, any other comments by MDE that we have, about potential changes or suggestions from MDE?
No, I think
Okay.
Kristen touched on it I think, just the 3,300 change, and then also moving the amendment down to just to address the 3 notifications on page 2, part 3. I think that was originally what we were trying to go for with the amendment for that, but of course, whatever the subcommittee wants to do.
Okay.
And for
All
purpose of subcommittee, that, I've spoken to MDE and I'm clear, and I can draft that so that the amendment, appears in the right place and has the impact that MDE is seeking and others are seeking.
Thank you.
Okay. So again, I do appreciate all the interest in this. Let me make this request. Well, first of all, Gabby, you'll get back to us on those 2 notice related issues. And then I want to ask that any subcommittee member who has an interest in fine tuning any provision of this space related to the notice, or, I think Delegate Ruth, you raised a good question, which I guess Kristen can address about the MTBE notice. We really don't want intended to be parents of students at colleges. So if anyone has any suggestions for other amendments, can you get them to Kristen, and who can consolidate them, and then we can take them up, review them at our next meeting. Does that sound okay to everyone? Delegate Terrasa, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So just to clarify, so we're talking about doing 3,300, which seems like most people seem okay with, but Kristen, are you going to be working on something, or I guess, Mr. Chairman, are you saying to work on something that says there will be some kind of notice under 3,300?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah, I
ahead,
have a
Kristen.
good idea of what to do. I've already jotted down. I haven't drafted anything. I just had a feel on the way that amendment came in. It wasn't really what MDE was asking for. So it's just a matter of just drafting it.
Oh, okay. And also on the college thing, it seems like the students who live there would be given notice anyway, because of where they live, right? Like the notice is going to be out there for anyone who lives in the area. I think the parents being notified is sort of additional. I don't know whether or not we want college students' parents to know if there's a water contamination.
So
But I just think it's extra, right?
well, MTBE notices are to water systems that serve child care centers, elementary or secondary.
Oh, okay,
schools, or
sorry.
any other, or
okay.
any other facility that regularly serves minors. So this was expanding it to also colleges and students.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. And also, Kristen, I guess if I was going to say, we should certainly I can certainly circle back with the sponsor after, the different amendment ideas come in. So maybe, Kristen, when we say that if anyone has any idea, additional amendments, to get them to you by Monday, does that sound right?
Sure. I mean, I get them to me as soon as possible, but I mean, not a rush, but weekends. Once things start coming in like later Monday and stuff, there's other things are coming in too. So
Okay,
you
well, always
know.
say by Monday morning then.
Yeah.
And so just Kristen a chance to process amendment ideas and also so we can circle back with the sponsor.
Yeah, a lot of what was talked about, I can do some cleanup. So if anybody's interested, instead of like, don't waste time doing something that I might have already done. So just let me know you're interested, and then I can share with you what I have, and we can go from there.
Okay, sounds good. And then hopefully, the bill will be in a position where we can, consider the amendments and conceivably vote it out next Wednesday. Okay, any other questions about this bill? All right, let's move on then to House Bill 31, Delegate Love's environment, products and packaging, labeling, marketing and advertising for recycling. And Delegate Love has submitted a number of amendments, so wanted and this is also the first time that we've reviewed the bill. So Kristen, could I ask you to go through the bill, including the amendments Delegate Love has provided, and Delegate Love, certainly feel free to chime in.
Yeah, hold on. I just want to make sure I have the right.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Apologies, friends, that there are so many amendments, but I worked with a lot of stakeholders, Maryland Recycling Network and the MDE and Montgomery County and a lot of other folks to get the language just right. So my apologies, but hopefully we got it right.
Yeah, no problem. I know you put a lot of work into the bill.
Delegate Love, I do have a question for you. We've received 2 sets of amendments. Both sets of amendments are what you're offering.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm going to go off the latest reprint because the amendments aren't merged yet. I can merge them for subcommittee. I just didn't have time to do that today. But that way, the next time, if the subcommittee brings this up, they'll have a completed reprint. I'll start with the ones that I think you work closely with MDE, and then I'll go back to the other ones. So some of them overlap. So let's see. So the bill is establishing standards for environmental marketing claims made with respect to products and packaging, and establishes requirements that a product or packaging must meet to be considered recyclable. And there's also prohibitions that make an untruthful, deceptive, or misleading environmental marketing claim, and the sale, distribution, or importation of any product or packaging labeled with or depicting an untruthful, deceptive, or misleading environmental marketing claim regarding recyclability. I'll just start going through the amendments through the reprint, in order of the pages with oh my gosh. And I'm going in order of the page numbers. So the first part of the amendments, starting in line.
Kristen, I'm sorry, this is not the right version.
You are correct. This is not the right version. So let's see. This is what number?
This is the original bill.
No, but you're right. It's not the right version. Let me see the amendment number. So this is 383. Wait.
Oh, that's going to be MDE's.
I think these are the MDE amendments. Do you want to start with the other ones first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine. Just give me a second because it always takes me forever to find my stuff. So that was 383. So this is 690. Okay, 690. 693.
Yeah. Is this from, I'm sorry, just to clarify, is this the one that says 2/2023?
I think that's right.
That's what it says.
So this is an older one. Okay, I gotcha.
I'm sorry, I didn't even hear what the question was. Oh, 2/2023.
Yeah.
Yes, so these were the first set of amendments that came in. I can't remember if they came in at the bill hearing or close to it. So go with those first. All right. So starting in line 22, that restores the current law definition of container which is basically excluding plastic bags from coming under the requirements of the bill. The definition of label, which is there after line 24, the current law definition is also being restored here. The definition of plastic bottle, the bill had amended, the capacity of, hold on, someone's calling me. Sorry about that. So the bill as drafted would have defined a plastic bottle as having a capacity of at least 8 fluid ounces, which was a reduction from existing law of 16 fluid ounces. And this amendment reduces that capacity to 2 fluid ounces, but not more than 5 gallons. And that part's current law. I go off my notes here too. So okay, so this language here, so the bill prohibits a container from displaying a chasing arrow symbol if the container is not considered recyclable, but then it cross-references section 2503, which is on.
Kristen, I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Right above that on line 13, we're taking out, this is kind of part of the heart of the bill. We're taking out where it says you have to have the number.
The chasing
arrows.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So the next amendment clarifies that the prohibition from not being able to display a chasing arrow symbol if the container is not recyclable, that does not apply to instances where there's a list of instances where certain actions are not untruthful, deceptive, or misleading environmental marking claims, and that's on page 7, starting in line 19. The definition under the bill, materials recovery facility is being altered to be a facility that processes single or dual stream curbside recyclable materials.
I'm sorry, Kristen, what page is this?
So we are on page 5, and this
5,
is starting
okay.
in line 22.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't remember which is what, so I'm just scrolling. So this amendment relates to the recyclability of packaging. The bill as introduced would tie that to both the prevalence of that type of product or packaging being collected and recycled. And so this strikes the language that would have tied it to the prevalence of those materials being recycled.
So I guess, Dr. Love, this is a key part of the bill. You just want to, for everyone's benefit, explain what that threshold, relates to.
Yes, in defining what is recyclable, so knowing what can have those chasing arrows, it's got to be collected for recycling in jurisdictions that collectively, as it says, encompass at least 60% of the state population. So we wanted a large enough portion of the population where it's collected to deem it recyclable. If I made any sense with that, which I don't think I did. Sorry about that. If the majority of it can be collected for the majority of the population, then it's deemed recyclable and they can have the chasing arrows label. How's that?
That sounds good. And also, Delegate, you said that MDE will provide information on which products meet that threshold.
Yes,
right?
There's a amendment that we'll look at next that provides that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, Kristen, you want to continue?
Sure.
Delegate Morgan, I see your hand. I'm sorry, Delegate Morgan, I see your hand, but let's go through this set of amendments and then we'll take your question.
I'm not sure what the significance of taking out refuse disposal system is here, Delegate Love.
Yeah, because it doesn't apply to them.
Okay, that's what, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. And then I think, oh, and then for the penalties under the bill, would increase it to a fine not exceeding $1,000 per violation. That starts on line 16. The bill as drafted came in at $50. So this would.
Okay, all right. Let's see. All right, Delegate Morgan, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Could you help me out here? Back on page 8, could you tell me collected for recycling in jurisdictions that collectively encompass at least 60% of the state population? Can you help me with 60% of the population is, or where is 60% of the population?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
I don't, on page 8, line 3, 4,
Mhm.
it talks about 60% of the state population.
Mhm.
Could you tell me or help me with that percent? Where's that percentage?
Where's that percentage?
Yeah, I'm
So-
just confused.
I'm not sure if I understand, so apologies if I don't answer your question right.
Okay.
But what we're trying to say is that something can be considered recyclable, and thus have the chasing arrows label if basically a majority of the population in Maryland, if it's collected for recycling for a majority of the population, which really translates to that there are enough facilities in the materials MRFs, material facility. We've got it up there. I can't come up with the title right now. But there are enough facilities in Maryland that can process this material to be recycled.
And
So,
Delegate
yeah,
Love, I think this might also even tie into the piece in the MDE amendments where there will be an analysis conducted by MDE to determine the recyclability.
Correct.
Is that
Thank
what we were trying to figure out? Like, how is this number determined? There will need to be some sort of analysis to find, to figure out.
Thank you, Kristen.
And Delegate Love also, am I right in thinking that the 60% threshold comes from the FTC guidelines?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You're absolutely correct.
Okay, great. Delegate Morgan, are you good? Okay, Delegate Otto.
Mr. Chairman, my question was similar to Delegate Morgan, so I don't think I need to elaborate on it.
Okay, Delegate Terrassa.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 questions. So on page 2, the change back of the container definitions, does that mean this would only apply to plastic bottles? Or is it rigid containers? I'm just having trouble reading the.
It goes back. Yeah, it goes back to the original language of rigid plastic containers and bottles.
Correct.
Okay.
They didn't want plastic bags to be included in the
Okay,
definition of container. So
Okay,
that's what that amendment is.
Okay,
It might
it's
be-
just hard for me to read it, but I understand what you're saying and I appreciate, and I agree with that.
The brackets around the language that says or plastic bottles are being stricken. It is hard to see, but those brackets are.
Yeah, I believe you guys. It's very confusing. I got it. As long as I'm
Sorry.
trying to do. And then on page 3, I didn't understand what you were saying, and maybe it's also because of my inability to read these reprints the right way. But you said this is taking out the heart of the bill. Like, I didn't understand what you said was coming out.
I'm sorry, this is the heart of the bill, which
Okay,
is saying right now it's in law that they have to use the chasing arrows. And we're
Right.
saying we're taking out the section of code that says you have to use those chasing arrows. And we're defining when you can use those chasing arrows.
okay, and is that changing in the reprint? That's what I'm just. It's the
No,
reprint.
no.
Yeah, here.
I-
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was talking about the bill and Kristen was talking about the changes from the
Thank you.
reprint, so I confused things. I'm
That
sorry.
was exactly what I thought this bill was trying to do and. still
Yeah,
do.
my
Thank you.
apologies.
No, I think it's my confusion on the reprints. Thank you so much. I'm good now.
So Doug and Love, just so I'm clear, so the plastic resin number still has to be on the container. It's just that it's not to be within the chasing arrow symbol anymore.
Correct, unless it hits that 60% threshold.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Doug and Morgan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 2, on the very last line, 20, it has a capacity of 2 fluid ounces. What kind of a container has 2 fluid ounces unless you're going to the drugstore?
So you're exactly right, Delegate Morgan, and we have gone back and forth on that number. Montgomery County was adamant that they take those pill bottles and they want those pill bottles and they want people to know that they can recycle those pill bottles. So that's why we went down to 2. A lot of facilities don't accept those, but
Right.
some do. So that's why we said at least 2.
I guess, okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Otto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm getting more confused at what are we trying to do with it, Bill? I mean, you're
I'm so
talking
sorry,
about
Delegate
2
Otto.
ounces. I mean, you can take that on an airplane. I mean, I just don't understand what we're trying to do. And you're talking about the chasing arrows and this, that, and the other. Is it a labeling bill, or is it you're going to have more packaging with putting them arrows on it than what I don't know what we're trying to accomplish here. So
I'm
please,
sorry.
please share it with me.
Yes, I will. So right now in law, every rigid plastic container must contain on the bottom the chasing arrows symbol with a number in the middle of it. All of us associate the chasing arrows symbol with it being recyclable, something being recyclable. And that's not always the case. So I don't know if you remember the hearing, but I pulled up a yogurt container. It is not recyclable in the state of Maryland at all, but it has the chasing arrows symbol. So this is, I call it a truth in labeling bill. Like, you can't label something as recyclable if it's not recyclable. So that's the heart of this bill. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Morgan?
Yeah, that thank you, Delegate Otto. So I believe in recycling a lot. And so do all states, neighboring states, have these same triangles and recycle differently? Because it goes back to some of the plastic industry guys said in their testimony. It says, will we be required to make containers different from Maryland than we do in neighboring states? Hence, with interstate commerce, you could be selling yogurt in West Virginia, Delaware, Maryland. Are the manufacturers have to make a different container for Maryland with a different set of triangle rules to make their product here versus their neighboring states?
So that's a really good question. California has passed this law, and a number of other states are looking at it. Years ago, the plastics industry went state by state by state and got in, I don't remember, either 40 or 26, and I can't remember which one right now, in state law that you have to have the chasing arrows. So it's actually a patchwork right now as it is.
But then again, if they're making yogurt, would the yogurt container in Maryland have to be different for Dannon than their yogurt container in Pennsylvania?
I don't know what the Pennsylvania law is. I don't know if it's required in their law or if it would be considered a deceptive practice. It would be considered a deceptive practice in California if it's not recyclable. I don't know if they got it in Pennsylvania's law.
I'm worried about the guy making the yogurt or the whatever in the neighboring states where, the truck's going to drop off 5 cases here or then go over to York, Pennsylvania, drop some cases off and bing, bing, bing.
Sure, I agree with that, but I'm more worried about Maryland's, my tax dollars having to go to sort out all of this stuff that isn't recyclable, because right now we're paying a lot to do that. And so quite frankly, if their thing isn't recyclable, it shouldn't be labeled as recyclable. My tax
Okay.
dollars shouldn't have to fix their label.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a comment in response to that, and maybe it's partially a question, but this doesn't require chasing arrows on anything. It just allows for chasing arrows only when it's recyclable by 60% of the population.
Correct.
So if a company that operates in all different states doesn't really have to put different chasing arrows on, what they'd have to do is not put chasing arrows on anything that that was generally not recyclable. And I guess they're gonna then have to lobby the other states to say, don't require us to give you misleading information anymore.
Yes.
So I really appreciate this bill. I would love to move it if we can, but
Yeah, not today, but.
okay, well, as
just
soon as we
might-
can.
Yeah, okay. Delegate Ruth.
Yeah, I love this bill also, and to Delegate Love's point about saving taxpayer money with stuff being sent to the recycling and they have to sort through it. I sometimes stand over my recycle bin and I have Baltimore County's directions like taped up over the recycle bin, and I'm standing there like, should I put this in or not? Is this recyclable? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good to make sure that's clear.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions about these amendments, because we do have another set to go through. Okay, great. Why don't we go through the amendments that are reflected in the March 7th reprint? If I've got that right, Kristen.
Yeah, and I believe some of them overlap, some of the changes overlap. So of course, Delegate Love, stop me if I get too far ahead, but I'm starting where the recyclability standards, that part would be delayed by 18 months, and then would require the department to analyze and determine the recyclability of the state solid waste stream.
Yes, that was requested by MDE.
So what page, I'm sorry, are we on?
So we're starting on page 8 with line 25 is where it starts. That's where the delayed implementation goes from January 1, 2024 to July 1, 2025.
Okay.
And then there's language on the next page after line 4 would require the department to publish on its website a list of the products and packaging that meet the requirements, the recyclability requirements. It would require the department to analyze and determine the recyclability of the state solid waste stream every 5 years. There's a special section, I'm just going to scroll, that would require the department by March 31st, 2025 to do that initial analysis and determination on recyclability.
One question I have for the sponsor, maybe in MDE, some reason in the back of my head, I think, isn't there already a study that MDE does on recycling, on recyclability, something like this? Or am I just making that up?
They do a solid waste management report, but
Not focused on recycling?
there's recycling, but the recyclability of products, I think that's something different, but I would defer to MDE to answer.
I think you may be thinking of some bills that I have in this session.
Okay.
Right. There is,
All
yeah,
right.
there's a, yeah, the, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, there's definitely another bills. There's,
Okay, that's fine.
okay. And so then, so that would be done every 5 years. And then the penalty provision is being changed from a criminal penalty to an administrative penalty. And I think that's it for those amendments.
Now, let's see, the $50 per violation.
So this is where they're not merged, Mr. Chair.
And so that would be it'd be administrative penalty of not exceeding $1,000 per violation.
I see,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so these reflect MDE's requested amendments, is that right?
I believe, yes, but Gabby, if I got anything wrong, please feel free to, maybe email me and the chair and Kristen, and we'll get them correct. But yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
I
All
think
right.
they were generally okay. I think they want to take a look at the merged amendments too. So I'll get them, I'll get that merged document to Gabby as well.
great. Okay, Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a little trouble unmuting there. Excuse me. So I'm really a little, I just want to make sure I understand how this 60%, the recyclability as determined by whether or not the containers are recyclable by 60%, by jurisdictions representing 60% of the state's population. Is that right, Delegate Lowe?
Yes.
Okay. And so then that 5-year analysis by MDE determines that. Is that it? That's looked at every 5 years and
Yes.
it's determined. Okay. So I'm wondering, so supposing that changes and it drops, and it, I'm trying to, because it seems like it's a little bit of a moving target. So if that changes, then how does that affect the, the use of the labeling, the recycling labeling? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. And it's a good question. Again, that would determine whether something can be recycled. And the reason we have the assessment every 5 years is because more and more things, Montgomery County in particular is working on being able to recycle more and more things. So we may be able to add more things to the list as time goes on.
So a follow-up to that, and I'm glad you said that, because a follow-up to that, my impression has been that in this country, not necessarily just in Maryland, but in this country, we've had a problem with recycling and our ability to be able to recycle things. And so do you ever envision that there would be a situation where it would fall below the 60% level? And if so, I mean, maybe that's just like not a scenario that's going to happen. If so, then what?
That's a good question. And I am not the expert to be able to answer that. But if something were to fall below, then I think at that point, it could not be considered recyclable. And at that point, I would imagine that MDE would work with
Take it off.
producers. They'd take it off and they'd work with the producers before they started finding them. And that's also why we moved from a civil penalty to administrative penalty. So MDE has the flexibility to say, hey, you need to know that, X product is we can no longer recycle this. We're going to give you some time to get your stuff together. So it's not an immediate penalty.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't found MDE to be the most benevolent curators of those types of things. So,
Delegate Otto, man, were you not
but
reading?
I
about the
want to
water
know about
commission?
these fines and who's being assessed these fines.
Well, it would be the company that is labeling something recyclable when it's not.
The company. So is that the manufacturer of the packaging?
Yes.
Or is it the company shipping
No.
television from China?
No,
Or,
it's the manufacturer.
Of the
manufacturer
package.
distributor, however it first
So
gets
my
assessed.
paper company would be in trouble.
Your paper company?
Yeah,
Why?
if they're providing the packaging.
Paper is recyclable.
Yeah, we're talking, Delegate Otto, we're talking about plastic bottles here. Plastic containers, but Delegate Love, I mean, the bill does say manufacturer or distributor.
Thank you.
subject to a
I
penalty.
misspoke.
So, yeah, so maybe, I don't know if we want to clarify that or leave it as is, just. you know.
So the paper is fully recyclable and we don't have to worry about paper or cardboard.
Correct. They're not in this bill at all.
All right.
Okay, Delegate Tarasa.
I think that might have been from before, but if not, I forgot what I was going to comment on.
Okay.
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry. I do remember. It was
Sure.
on Delegate Foley's question. And just, I guess I don't see how this could drop below 60%, because what we're doing is adding technology. I mean, to go below 60%, then a certain area would have to stop recycling something that they already have the technology for.
No, they'd have to stop recycling. So this happened in Pennsylvania, where my parents live. So they just, it's not worth it anymore to recycle. So they just stopped recycling. So that could affect the 60% level, is my point. If a county stopped recycling, that could have, the 60% level could be affected, not just by the product itself, but by the actual recycling facilities. That's what I was envisioning.
This does sound like a future bill. Like, I don't know why we'd let counties stop recycling, but yeah, I gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah,
Based on the market.
and Delegate, the Maryland Recycling Act does set recycling minimums for large, and it varies depending on whether you're a large or small jurisdiction. Not sure if there's been an administrative penalty in any case where a county has fallen below the required threshold, but in any case, I think in theory, there would be a consequence if a county said, no, we're not going to recycle anymore. You know, we're just going to stop everything, take it to the landfill. But in any case, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Delegate Foley's question, I also just wanted to mention that I think that this would also be encouragement to producers to produce products that are more widely recyclable, so that they can get that symbol on there, be able to say it's recyclable and not have to worry about it dropping off, as opposed to a product that may be recyclable some places and not other places, which, you know, I think is a good thing. We want producers to move towards more widely recyclable products.
Yeah, absolutely.
Packaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has McCormick weighed in on this and their packaging and the bottling plants that we have? I know I have a Pepsi-Cola bottling plant in my district that I think highly of.
So McCormick hasn't. We talked to them about a different bill, but they haven't weighed in on this for years.
Have any of the bottlers weighed
Nope.
in?
Nope.
Okay.
So
Okay.
those 6-pack strands, that plastic is this
That-
part of that bill?
No, not the strands, because
That
they're not,
hold
they
the
don't fall
cans
under the
together?
definition of container.
Okay.
Okay, you good, Delegate Otto?
Yep.
Okay. Good questions. Thanks for all the discussion. So at this point, we'll wait for the combined reprint. And you know, we'll take a look at that and you know, conceivably, you know, discuss the bill again at a future meeting. So all right. Let's see. Okay, Ellen Valentino, you submitted opposition. Without going to the details of your opposition, but that's on behalf of what group, Ellen? Ellen, okay, well, I guess we could take a look at the written testimony. So, okay,
You know what,
The
Mr.
Maryland, Delaware,
Chair?
DC Beverage Association.
Yep, I stand corrected. I thought it was on behalf of her other client, the fossil fuel folks.
And
Okay.
I think she's not connected to audio.
yeah, it looks that way, yeah, okay. Well, anyone who's interested can take a look
There
at
she is.
her
She's
testimony.
up, she just came up. Up.
And then disappeared.
Well, I just was curious, who was she representing in the testimony without getting into the specifics of her, the substance of her
And
testimony.
did you hear
So,
my response, Delegate Stein?
yeah, Maryland,
Yes,
Delaware.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think we are done. Yeah. Delegate Otto, okay, so you don't want us to add another bill and
No, we don't need any more.
okay, all right. Okay. Thank you all. And we will be meeting again soon. I mean, I think I've said this like each of the past two meetings that, well, we might be meeting more often as we get closer to crossover, which is now in 12 days, right? So we may very well be doing that, but for now, at least just count on next Wednesday after bill hearings.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you all.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Tonight.